you. Good afternoon. I formally declare open this planning meeting of Colac Otway Shire on 13th of March 2024. Almighty God, we seek your blessing and guidance in our deliberations on behalf of the people of the Colac Otway Shire and enable this council's decisions to be those that contribute to the true welfare and betterment of our community. Amen. I would like to start this afternoon by acknowledging the traditional custodians and lawmakers of this land, their elders past and present, and welcome any descendants here today. This meeting is recorded and live streamed with the exception of confidential matters. This includes the public participation sections of the meeting. The live stream recording of this afternoon's meeting will be available on the website as soon as practicable. By participating in open meetings, individuals consent to the use and disclosure of the information they share at the meeting, including any personal and/or sensitive information. I note that 7 councillors are present, with Councillor Finnegan joining us online. Are there any declarations of interest? No declarations of interest. Confirmation of minutes. I propose that we move to confirm the minutes of the planning meeting held on February 14, 2024. Do I have a mover? Councillor Potter. Do I have a seconder?
Well, I've got an objection, Mayor. I understand that and I did send in a question, there's been a contradiction in the permit number for the Hesse Street property between the draft minutes and also when the matter was adopted in the ordinary meeting. The issue is whether the permit number's PP 334-20231 or 20221. I think it's 2022. I'm not sure whether the minutes reflect that because I'd have to double check which was which. But can we have a look at the draft minutes, please?
Thanks, Councillor Hart. Can we have a look at the draft minutes and just check the numbers? Got someone.
Do officers have a response?
Yeah, the draft minutes have got 2023, but I believe it's meant to be 2022. So perhaps that's what the agenda said, but I think that if we are going to adopt the minutes which have a wrong permit number, we should at least have some sort of additional clarification that it's been noted that the permit number is actually the correct, and note what the correct one is.
Note the correct number.
Yeah, so...
So can we have that?
Sorry, just I'm waiting for an opportunity for Lord Hean to respond.
Oh, thank you.
Through you, Mayor, the correct reference is the 2022. So PP 334/2022-1.
Thank you.
So
Mayor, I'd seek your guidance and the CEO's guidance. The minutes are what happened, and I think in that sense it should probably be adopted with the 2023, which is an error. But if that's going to happen, I think there should be some sort of note that's attached to them.
Sorry, can I just confirm what's in the agenda before we decide the course of action? Just one moment. Just one moment. Okay, the agenda was referenced as 2023, not 2022. So it's an issue with the agenda, not just the minutes, okay?
So we need a correction in two parts.
I can suggest a way, I'm happy for advice. It would be that we'd move a motion that confirms the minutes but has a second point, note that there is an error in the minutes and that the correct permit number should be the one with 2022, and that should be, if there's any circulation of the minutes, that clarification should be circulated
That note
with the
should
minutes.
be made against the minutes.
Yep.
Okay, so So we make a note with the motion. So you'll move that with that note,
Happy to move that if that
Yep.
note can be
can be
part of it.
added
Yep.
added to the motion. Yep. Thanks, Councillor Potter. So is that to be opposed, that amendment?
We see it, sorry, just to,
That's the,
yeah, okay. Thank you.
I might suggest that we be a little more specific about the error, an error in relation to the permit number. No, an error in relation to no. Yeah, okay. In relation to, yes, please, the permit number for 28 Hesse Street, Colac. Which has been documented as, and then the number 334, blah, blah, blah. And, yep. Yep, in the minutes, I wouldn't reference the agenda because the minutes aren't about the agenda. Yep. And the correct permit number is, and then put the same number with the 2022. And then I'll just go full stop. And then I'd like it to say no further errors have been identified. So it's clearly just no further errors have been identified. So it is really clear that it is only that reference to that permit number. And Councillor Hart's motion, are you comfortable with that? Thanks.
so is the motion with the amendment to be opposed? No? So then I declare the motion carried. Thank you. Now we move on to officers' report. Item 7.1, PP 219-2021-2, staged development of 27 dwellings, additions and alterations to existing buildings and associated infrastructure works at 17 Balnagown Avenue. The purpose of the report is to consider an application for the staged development of 27 dwellings, additions and alterations to the existing buildings and associated infrastructure works. Councillors, before I ask for a motion, do any councillors wish to ask a question of officers? Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Mayor White. With this development, I notice all of the internal doors are at least about 820 standard. What sort of access does that provide for people, for mobility access for people who need that sort of access, given that something that we're advised, something of the target market of this is for the older age group?
Through you, Mayor, matters such as doorway widths internally in a dwelling, etc., are matters that are dealt with under the building regulations rather than through planning.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Hart.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. My question relates to an emergency situation. If, say, Unit 21 or Unit 20 on the map that we have was on fire, then how do other residents of other houses escape the site if they want to? For example, if you were in, well, Unit 36, 37, 35 or 34, even 27, 28 and some of those other units, how would you escape the site if there was, if the access near 21 or 20 was blocked because of a fire situation or some other emergency situation?
Through you, Mayor, firstly, I'd like to say that this application was referred to the CFA so that safety issues were assessed as part of the proposal. So if a permit was issued, the CFA has confirmed things like the road widths, etc., would be suitable for it. And has also specified requirements in terms of fire hydrants and the like. In terms of internal access and egress, the main access is through Stoddart Road or via Stoddart Road Street. But there is also a pedestrian access towards the northeast of the site, which would provide ability for people to leave the site at the top of the site as well. Those would be the main entry and exit points from internal dwellings within the site.
Thank you. Follow-up question, Councillor Hart.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Regarding
Councillor
the
Finnegan.
other access point on the north-east of the site, how wide is that?
Through you, Mayor, that's 1.6 metres wide, or would be 1.6 metres wide. So it would be suitable for pedestrians, not for vehicle access and egress.
So how do vehicles exit the site in an emergency situation if the access point near lot 21 and 20 is blocked, such as if there's a fire, maybe there's a fire truck there? If you're in unit 36 or 37, 35, 34, or any of those units for a matter, how do you exit the site with a vehicle?
Through you, Mayor, as I say, this was referred to the CFA to ensure that it would meet its requirements in terms of safety. The CFA is satisfied with the layout. Obviously, there'd be protective measures within the site through the positioning of hydrants, etc. It may be that people may have to stay within the site if a unit further down the road was on fire, but otherwise, as I say, the access and exits would be vehicle or pedestrian via Stoddart Street and pedestrian to the northeast of the site.
Councillor Hart, then Councillor Finnegan.
So there's no vehicle exit in that situation. So it's been mentioned some of these were considered might be more suitable for older people. So if someone's having some sort of medical emergency while this is occurring, there's no vehicle access to get to them. Is that right? And does the CFA, when they give their advice, have regard to the potential access for medical emergencies, or are they more concerned with the access of their vehicles for the fire emergency?
Through you, Mayor, I can't comment in any detail on the operational processes of the CFA, but I would anticipate emergency services would be liaising with each other in a situation like that and would ensure that appropriate access was provided to any unit.
Thanks, Pauline.
And I haven't got an answer. It was a pretty simple question. How does the ambulance access to the site if someone in those back units has a medical emergency and access near unit lot 21 and 20 is blocked because of fire trucks trying to deal with a fire? How does the ambulance access the site?
Through you, Mayor, as I mentioned already, I would anticipate emergency services would communicate with each other, but there would also be potential for pedestrian access if needs be to a unit by paramedics or other medical staff.
So they'd wheel up a trolley from near lot 1 on the plan along that road to lot 36 because the ambulance can't access the site. I mean, isn't that the answer, that the ambulance vehicle cannot access the site in that situation? I mean, if that's the answer, just let's hear it.
Councillor Finnegan. You're on mute, Councillor Finnegan.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I do appreciate you informing me of such. Just going to put this hand down so it doesn't look janky on the recording. My question is in relation to the officer's recommendation around amended plans, and it's something I've just come across. It makes note that of reduction of the size of dwellings 28 and 29 to just become 2-bedroom without studies. What is the particular reasoning behind that? And are those the correct lot numbers, considering that they are on opposite sides of the street, if that makes sense?
Through you, Mayor. As proposed initially, they would have been 3-bedroom dwellings with only 1 car parking space. The planning scheme has specified rates of parking for dwellings dependent on the number of bedrooms they contain. So 3-bedroom or dwellings with 3 bedrooms or more should have 2 parking spaces available to them. To ensure that the proposal was compliant with the planning scheme provisions in terms of car parking provision, the applicant is reducing those 2 originally 3-bedroom dwellings to 2 bedrooms so that those dwellings would have the adequate amount of parking spaces. The reason it's no studies is obviously because a study could easily be converted to a bedroom or used as such. So that's the reasoning behind it, to ensure compliance with the parking rates in the planning scheme.
Thank you, Councillor
Thank
Roberts.
you so much.
Thank you, Mayor White. Thank you. You're prepared for the questions, that's okay, just with respect. These sorts of developments and planning permits must comply with the Res Code, correct? With the Victorian Code for planning permits of dwellings in more than one lot? More than one dwelling on a lot?
Through you, Mayor, proposals are required to comply with the objectives of Clause 55, which is commonly known as Res Code,
Yep.
and should comply with the standards that are specified. So variations can be allowed to standards, provided the overall objectives of Clause 55 are met.
Right, so that includes, amongst other things, the neighbourhood site and description satisfactory provided, and does it meet the objectives of the clause? Have we got some sort of commentary or in respect to those, please? I guess just to clarify that maybe for you, does the development meet all of the objectives of respect to neighbourhood character, protects the amenity and is sustainable?
Through you, Mayor, as part of the proposal, the application was required to address all of those matters. It has been assessed as doing so. What the officer's report does is flag any variations that are required to standards that are cited in clause 55, but overall it's considered that the proposal would meet the objectives of clause 55 and could reasonably be allowed against the provisions of, as I say, what's commonly known as Res Code.
Thank you. If I may, through
Follow-up
Mayor.
question.
Yes, my understanding is that there's 39 units in total within this development, going from the numbers in here, of which about 18 are outside, in other words, facing Balnagown Avenue and Stoddard Street. So the balance of the units, approximately about 21, would be inside encased within that development, if you like, Stoddard and Balnagown Avenues. So, and they are serviced by what is essentially private driveways. There's no road into that. It's actually a private driveway, private property, which is what Councillor Hart was referring to, in access for vehicles of any kind.
Through you, Mayor, there would obviously be public access into the land, but they would not be public roads or managed by council.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Costin.
Thank you, Mayor. Some of the submissions have raised concerns about the management of rubbish bins, their storage, collection, and whatever. Can you describe how the applicant proposes to manage solid waste? Thank you.
Through you, Mayor, those dwellings that are external to the site would just have normal four-stream bin collection from the road frontages. Internally within the site, there are two communal areas proposed where there would be waste bins for those dwellings internal to the site. And as part of the proposal, it would effectively be a case of that would be arranged so that those larger bins would be taken to the street frontages for collection. It has been looked at by our waste management unit, and we've been advised it's a satisfactory proposal in terms of what is proposed.
Thank you. Further follow-up?
Thank you. So is there any condition in the recommendation which actually addresses solid waste management? How can we be sure that the applicant will follow through with what's been discussed?
Through you, Mayor, there isn't in the current recommendation a condition, but we have provided wording should you consider that a condition should be imposed as part of any permit issued.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No further questions?
Sorry, Mayor. If I could come back to Councillor Finnegan's question about whether the dwelling numbers are correct in 1B. I've been advised that it should refer to dwellings 29 and 30, so that would need to be an amendment to the officer recommendation to ensure it's accurate.
Thank you, Blorheen. I was curious upon looking at the map and just sort of, that was, yeah, sorry, I didn't even pick up that bit of that. But yeah, thank you for answering that. So it should read 29 and 30, not 28 and 20.
That's correct.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Arnott.
So for just confirming that this is an application for a planning permit as it stands, it's not for a subdivision.
Through you, Mayor, there's no subdivision proposed at this time.
Thank you. So all of the land that's proposed in here will continue to be owned within a contingent unit of the Balnagown residence and estate.
Through you, Mayor, it would remain one lot in single ownership.
So at this particular point in time, the control of such items such as management of waste and that sort of stuff would be by the owner of that land.
Through you, Mayor, as owner, they would be responsible.
Has there been any commentary about how they would manage that in conjunction with the future owners of these proposed allotments?
Through you,
Helen.
Mayor, in the event that the land is subdivided into the future, there would be body corporate management of that waste management. The lots facing onto the street would have their own waste services, and the internal lots that are serviced through the entrance from Stoddart Street would be a combined waste management system, which would be under the control of the body corporate.
Follow up.
Just to
Last question.
make that very clear, so at this point in time, none of these properties have a separate title. None of them can be sold separately because they're not sitting within a body corporate now and cannot be recognised as such, as a separate title holding by individuals. Is that correct?
Through you, Mayor, the land remains in single ownership. There are no titles to be sold off other than one single.
So
lot.
right now, we're not talking about a body corporate or how that will work. We're only talking about this as one application right now.
Currently at this time, through you, Mayor, currently at this time, that's what we're discussing. As the officer mentioned, should subdivision be proposed in the future, at that time there would be discussion around what body corporate or corporates were required to manage a subdivision on an ongoing basis.
Thank you, Councillor Hart.
So I'm going to make this very, very clear that if we were to approve this now as a single holding, then in order for it to be traded hands, it would be then sold to another single person or body who would then take control of all this management. And so we don't know what that would look like. And so we almost have a expectation in the future of a subdivision application to body corporate breakup.
Through you, Mayor, as already mentioned, it would be one lot, one title, one owner of the land.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Blue. And I appreciate, not trying to trick you or anything, I'm just trying to get to the full of it. Thank you, I appreciate
Councillor
that.
Hart. Need to move on, Councillor Hart.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Why are the units or the dwellings described as lot numbers if there's no subdivision at this stage? Wouldn't they be more appropriate unit numbers if it was a multi-unit development?
Through you, Mayor, I understand that the reason that they're indicated as such on the plans is because the application initially came in as subdivision as well. For clarity, the amended plans condition that's in front of us at the moment could be revised to have an additional line to say that the annotations on the plan referencing lots be altered to units, or wording to that effect.
Thank you. Okay, councillors. Oh, sorry, Councillor Finnegan, and then we need to move on. Thank you, Councillor Finnegan.
Thank you, Mayor. So, say that we were to go with the officer's recommendation today, or some variation on it, and approve this planning permit. Would the owner of the site as it currently sits be able to start advertising sale of units within future development? And what might such a process look like?
Through you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Yes, the applicant could do pre-sale, which is quite common in real estate, but no land could actually transfer until the time that a planning permit is issued for subdivision, and all services are connected, and then we would issue statement of compliance and titles would be issued, and then they would be able to be sold.
Thank you. Okay, councillors. The officers have provided a recommendation with the report for our consideration. Does any councillor wish to move a motion in relation to this matter? Anyone? Yep, one more question.
So we've got the revised officer recommendation with those few changes made. The dwelling number, and I think there's something further down, isn't there?
Through you, Mayor, the question might be whether the annotations are to be revised
Yeah.
on the plans, which isn't actually in that recommendation.
Through the chair, a question of Ms Butler. Would that look like in point 1, after the first sentence, a statement that would say amended plans should refer to dwellings, not lots?
I would probably put it in as A,
As A, okay.
and then have all the others
Yep.
renumbered after A.
And something like to show reference to dwellings, not lots.
So after the annotation A,
Yep.
modified to show,
No, after that, not instead of that.
so after the subsection A, so subsection A would become subsection B. So if you, yeah.
Yeah, but you've just deleted text.
And you could use wording along the lines of dwellings annotated as units rather than lots.
Councillor Hanson, do you want to confirm that's...
Well, I think that's right. And then further down, were there any other changes further down? No, there wasn't.
I don't think so, no.
No. I'll move that.
You'll move that?
I'll
Do I
move
have
the
a seconder?
recommendation.
Councillor Finnegan, is it to be opposed? Councillor Arnott. Councillor Hanson.
So what we have here is a planning permit is sought to develop the staged construction of 27 dwellings at the land known as Balnagowan. There is a long history to this parcel of land, and quite a lot of it's detailed in the officer report. The site has a long history and is held in special regard by the community due to its proximity to the lake and the historical homestead. And it's also had many, the homestead's been a house, a home. It's been a reception centre. The homestead sort of fell into some disrepair. It's being renovated, which is a huge project. The land surrounding the area has also had many iterations as well, including the retirement village proposal. So this development that's in front of us, where a planning permit is being sought, leaves a significant land area around the homestead. A significant area to be developed, is a garden or whatever, but around the actual homestead itself. And the townhouse development, the bulk of it is to the south of the homestead. Some of that area has already been developed into 12 units, and the main entrance for the townhouse development is off Stoddard Street. The application was not required to be referred to any external agencies, but it was. We have received feedback from the CFA, who required further information regarding access and fire hydrants, which was addressed. It was also referred to the Eastern Mar Aboriginal Corporation, and a cultural heritage management plan was sought, and it was provided and has been approved. The officers have addressed the application against the planning scheme and have recommended with conditions issuing a permit. I will also be supporting the issuing of a notice of decision to grant a permit. This is quite a significant development. It's a significant change for the area. Colac is in desperate need of a real mix of housing. This will provide a different type of housing that Colac is in desperate need of, smaller housing. It can be suitable to older people, but it will be very suitable to younger people, to single people, to smaller households. It will be quite a change. I thank the people who came to the submissions meeting and made submissions both for and against the project. But I think on balance, this, what we have in front of us, will make a significant contribution to the area and meets the planning scheme, and I'll be supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Councillor Finnegan?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm rising to support, I guess, to second this motion. Reality is, it's going to. I believe it's a good outcome. We're going to see 27 new homes within our shire, much needed smaller size market. These dwellings are located on the side of Ballingowan House, and it's a beautiful area, Colac, down by the lake, that's important to everyone in this town. And there's a lot of emotion caught up in this site. I think there's a lot of people who have memories of how it once was. As others have mentioned, had fallen into a bit of a state previously. There have been previous attempts at development, particularly in relation to a retirement village at this site, that haven't gone ahead as were initially planned, and as a result, we're looking at this application here today, and I think that it will be a great outcome, not just for the area, but for the Shire, and not just for the area and the amenity area and how it looks, but also for the Shire in general, because we will have more housing, particularly in that in that space whereby we need it, because not everyone wants to live in a big 4 or 5 bedroom house on many hundreds of squares. The reality is that there are people who are looking to break into the market or looking to downsize, and I believe that as this development moves ahead, that these dwellings will be attractive to small households of all ages, be they younger people, older people, single people, coupled people, perhaps even young families. And I hope that hope this motion gets up, and I hope that we can be able to look back and say this is yet another thing that has been done to help resolve the housing crisis, particularly within Colac itself in relation to small sized dwellings.
Thank you, Councillor Finnegan. Councillor Arnott?
Thank you, Mayor White. It's with some trepidation that I review this application, because there's obviously some positives to it, and I'm not going to deny that it does provide some opportunities for some different style of housing, some smaller houses and lots for those that to meet that market demand. And I think it can do that very, very well, and has done that to some extent with those houses that are currently in there, the 1s to 12 on Ballingowan Avenue and Stoddard Street, and the rest of them that are proposed around that. Where it gets into great difficulty is inside in stage 3, in my view, in that it becomes just too concentrated, too much area filled with houses and not enough area for community. And I would direct people, if they wanted to have an idea of how to do it right, is Leppington in New South Wales, a suburb of Sydney, new area there. They've got very concentrated housing, some of it much larger houses than what's proposed here, on very small allotments, but they have huge community shared areas for people to go to, and with amenities attached to that. So that was a way to do it properly. I think that this misses the mark. If there were 2 or 3 less units inside, I would probably be more supportive of this. I don't see it at the moment. It's a retirement village development without the support of a retirement village, in my view. It does change the amenity of the area, although their design that they've selected, I'll acknowledge, has been reasonable. But when I refer to the building code for Victoria, the res code, as we talked to, section 54, 55, doesn't meet all of the development objectives, and it talks about here there should be no trade-off objectives. And one of the things I'm concerned about is its sustainability, and Councillor Costin referred to that in one of his questions about the hard rubbish disposal and how that's going to work and how it's going to be managed internally. And we're talking about body corporates maybe, but we don't know. We're not allowed to see that yet because this is just this planning application as it is. And the commentary around the planning requirements on the Victorian site says, if a planning application does not meet one or more of the objectives, council must refuse the application. It also goes on to say, however, it would be useful to assess the application in full before issuing a refusal so that unsatisfactory aspects of the application can be identified, and that those can be addressed. So I would prefer that this could go back to the applicant for some more consideration to get this right, rather than the council accept it in its current, I consider, flawed format. Thank you.
Any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Potter.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, the concept for development of this style has been around for some years in relation to this site, with the first proposal being a retirement village with a similar number of housing or dwellings. That fell by the wayside, and we have this proposal here that hasn't really come out of the blue, because this type of thing has been around for quite some years now. I suspect that we may end up with a subdivision proposal down the track, but we should not be considering that at this point. We have to consider what's in front of us. I do have concerns about emergency services access. I share the concerns around hard waste in particular, and environment sustainability. And I also am mindful of the potential impact on the amenity of the surrounding houses and residents, especially during construction. So I'll be interested in listening to any other councillor who are going to speak, and listening to Councillor Hanson's summing up before I make a call on it.
Thanks, Councillor Potter. Councillor Costin.
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. I'd like to propose an amendment, thank you, an additional clause 26.
Have we got the amendment up there?
Yes, that's it. It relates to the solid waste management, and it just proposes some tidying up so that we can see exactly what is proposed through a waste management plan and how that aligns with our environmental sustainability strategy.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for the amendment? Thank you, Councillor Hart. Is it to be opposed? Councillor Costin.
Thank you, Mayor. This is just straightforward. There is, reading through this, there just seems to be an omission of requirements in relation to solid waste management. It was an issue raised by some submitters, and this just requires the submission of a plan and acceptance of the plan by our officers, by our waste management officers, before the development proceeds. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Costin. Councillor Hart.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I think that with some improvements, this could have been or could be a permit that could be granted. I just make the point that I'm only speaking to the amendment and reserve my rights in relation to the motion itself. This is, as Councillor Costin pointed out, something that has been raised and is a sensible amendment to perhaps address at least some of the to use Councillor Arnett's word, some of the flaws in the current proposal as it's been put forward. So I'll be supporting this amendment.
Any other councillor wish to speak to the amendment? I'll now put it to...
Sorry, Mayor, before you vote on that, if I could just get some clarification. So with this amendment, it reads that it's been moved by Councillor Costin, seconded Councillor Hart, and it just reads as a condition. It needs to note that that condition is to be included within the substantive motion.
That needs to be included in the amendment. Yep. Councillor Costin.
Just wait while we get that, please, Chair.
Thank
No,
you.
it's above the line moved and seconded needs to be above all the purple text, please.
I think that reads better, thank you.
Thanks.
We got it? Okay. Yep. Councillor Hart, you comfortable seconding that?
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour of the amendment? Carried 7-0. Thanks, Councillor Finnegan. Okay, we'll go back to the substantive motion with the amendment in it. We'll go back to where we were. Councillor Councillor... Wait till we get it up there. Okay. Thank you. Councillor Hart, I think you were next to speak. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. I think there are some aspects of this proposal that are worthy of support, and I think with some improvements, it would be something that I would support. Stage 2 in particular makes a lot of sense, but like some other councillors, I have concerns with Stage 3. I'm often criticised for speaking negatively about these matters, but unfortunately I've only got 3 minutes to speak, so I have to focus on my issues of concerns. And my issues of concern are particularly the emergency access. The CFA did put in a letter, that's quite true. Their focus is on the access for CFA vehicles, quite rightly, quite appropriately. Their focus is not every single emergency issue. So let's get away from this point that because the CFA are happy with the access at the front, that excuses all issues that may arise, particularly if there's a fire in lot 21 or lot 20 with a vehicle there is no vehicle access or exit to the site. If there's a medical emergency as well, and that may well occur in a fire situation, you've got someone at lot 35 or 36 or 37, there is no vehicle access to the site, no way the ambulance can get in. Presumably you've got to wheel a trolley all that way up to that site. And yet there is a simple solution. There is a simple solution because this hasn't been built yet, and that is around lot 31 and lot 1, yes, that's been built. There is going to be an access way that's 1.6 metres wide with just 3 metres greater width. The deficiency in terms of the access could be addressed. It may require some movement of existing servicing around north of Unit 1, but you're already putting some area in there, 1.6 metres wide for pedestrian access. So the sensible time to address this and instead make that 4.6 metres wide for emergency access of vehicles is now, before buildings are built. I think we have a responsibility to people who live in this and will live in these units. We have a responsibility to their health and safety. If that's being negative, well, I'm guilty of being negative if I'm the one being concerned about health and safety of future residents in an emergency. There is a very simple solution that exists near Unit 31 and Lot 1, where there will be a 1.6 metre wide path anyway. Make that 4.6 metres so emergency vehicles can access that way. But to improve this as it is, without that relatively minor but very important change for the health and safety of residents now and for the decades in the future, to approve it as it is now, in my view, is short-sighted and irresponsible, and I will not be a party to overlooking the health and safety of future residents in this development.
Thanks, Councillor Hart. Councillor Hanson.
Yes, I think everyone has spoken now. We've got the amendment. I'm happy to support the amendment moved by Councillor Costin. I think this is quite a different development for Colac. It certainly meets the needs of a changing demographic and changing housing needs. I think the key to a development like this will be in the landscaping, how well it's maintained, which is often some of the key requirements of any type of housing development, and what they might look like in the future. I take on board that some of the criticisms that have been levelled at it, but I will just state that it has been referred to external, has been referred to the CFA, which now doesn't have any issues with the site, and I will be supporting it.
Thanks, Councillor Hanson. Councillors, I'll now call for a vote. All those in favour? Those against? Carried 4-3. Division. All those in favour? Councillor Potter, Councillor Finnegan, Councillor Hanson, Councillor White. Those against? Councillor Hart, Councillor Arnott, Councillor Costin. Thank you, councillors.
Mayor, sorry for interrupting.
Councillor Finnegan.
I was wondering if we could potentially just take a quick 5-minute break, just so in case anyone needs to go to the bathroom and get a drink of water or anything.
Thanks, Councillor Finnegan. 5-minute break. Be back in a couple of minutes to 5. Thank you.
Just for, I can't see. I can see you all now. That's all.
Thank you. We're good to go? Thank you. Now we move on to item 7.2, and it's the development of retail apartments, waiver of car parking, liquor licence and provision of public toilets at 10 to 14 Pascoe Street, 51 to 53 and 55 Great Ocean Road, Apollo Bay. The purpose of this report is to consider an application for the development of retail apartments, waiver of car parking, liquor licence and provision of public toilets. Councillors, before I ask for a motion, do any councillors wish to ask a question of officers? Councillor Arnott, then Councillor Costin.
Thank you, Mayor White. Just a question, first question comes to mind. Does this development fit in with the overall planning and vision for the Apollo Bay? And can you explain how that fits in that, if it does?
Through you, Mayor. Firstly, yes, we believe it does. The proposal is within a commercial part of Apollo Bay and would provide 3 important retail units, including opening up Pascoe Street as well as an important IGA onto the Great Ocean Road. As part of the development, a public walkway would be run through the site, which would connect the Great Ocean Road with Pascoe Street. Again, something that's sought by strategic documents for Apollo Bay is those linkages between the Great Ocean Road and Pascoe Street to the rear. The proposal also includes the provision of public toilets, which again are important in the central location within Apollo Bay. The scale of development and everything is in line with planning scheme provisions. So in terms of its design, it's had regard to all the relevant planning controls. So in terms of the land use proposed, the linkages between the streets, the opening of Pascoe Street, and activation of that street frontage as well, and the public toilets, it's considered that certainly it fits well within the strategic direction for Apollo Bay.
Thank you. I appreciate the expansive response.
Thank you. Councillor Costin.
Thank you. That's a glowing endorsement of this project. So could you just explain why it has come to this planning committee? Thank you.
Through you, Mayor, as mentioned at the beginning of the report, we normally say why we're bringing things to planning committee. In this case, we consider it a development that could be regarded to affect the wider community in terms of its scale and importance in Apollo Bay. It also proposes the provision of public toilets in lieu of a financial contribution for car parking, which again we considered would be an appropriate thing to be considered by councillors. So unlike a lot of applications that come here, it wasn't because of the number of objections or anything. We've only received 2 objections to the proposal. It really was just because of the wider community interest.
Thank you. Councillor Costin, follow-up question.
Thank you. Thank you for that answer. And just following the theme that I had on the item before, how is solid waste management proposed to be addressed from this development, given that there is some news we hear at the moment regarding solid waste, regarding waste food from supermarkets? How is the applicant proposing to treat solid waste?
Through you, Mayor, areas for waste storage on site for both the commercial premises and the residential accommodation are shown on the ground floor level of the submitted plans. The commercial waste storage area is near the loading dock, so behind the main IGA and residential development fronting Great Ocean Road. That would be collected through private waste collection, and could it be accessed via Pascoe Street? There's access being provided into the loading area from there. In terms of the residential units, there's storage areas close to those units at ground floor level, so to the rear of those units fronting Great Ocean Road and near the other units. Those, as I understand, would be collected through normal waste collection and would be wheeled out onto Pascoe Street.
Thank you. Any other
Thank
question,
you.
Councillor Hart?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. This application includes an application for dwellings. Could I get some clarification, please? How do you decide whether or not it's appropriate to have dwellings in this zone, which I think is a commercial zone?
Through you, Mayor, within a commercial zone, the provisions basically say that a dwelling can be an as-of-right use, provided it's on the upper levels, basically. What it actually says is, as long as the frontage to the residential unit isn't greater than 2 metres. So in effect, that means you have access at ground floor level and your residential is above. From a planning perspective, it's actually can be quite a positive thing to have residential within a town centre. For activation, for surveillance, for vitality, and for all those reasons. But in terms of the commercial zone, as I say, as long as it, isn't taking up ground floor commercial space, it's actually something that can be very positive.
Thank you. Any other questions? No other questions. Councillors, the officers have provided a recommendation with the report for our consideration. Does any councillor... Sorry, I've got another question. Are there any other questions?
Through you, Mayor,
Yep.
Following discussions with the applicant, we have proposed some revisions to the recommendation. So these don't actually change what would actually be
Delivered.
the actual proposal. It just changes the timing of some things. So in terms of the conditions that we're proposing to amend from those in the officer recommendation in the agenda, in condition 5, we're proposing that the time period for entering into the section 173 be within 6 months of the commencement of development rather than prior to the commencement of development. Similar to 5.1, which again is within 6 months of the commencement of development, should a financial contribution be taken, it gets taken within that time frame, and that's to allow time for negotiation in terms of the public toilets versus the financial contribution, so that matter can be clarified. In 5.7, we have added some wording so that if the toilets are provided later in the development and the applicant has paid a financial contribution for the car parking, they can get refunded that amount rather than, in effect, council taking 2 lots of credit from the applicant. Condition 15. We have recommended that the hours of deliveries and waste collection be extended to 10 p.m. rather than the 6 p.m. that was in the original condition, and this recognises the fact that the land is within a commercial area and it would be very unusual actually to have a commercial premises restricted to 6 p.m. for those uses. And finally, in terms of condition 29, which looks to have a CCTV plan submitted for approval and then implemented. The applicant has asked whether that could be delayed from prior to the commencement of development to later in the process. So we've suggested prior to the completion of any part of the development adjacent to the public walkway, that plan has to be submitted. The implementation would still be prior to any of the buildings being brought into use, but that gives the applicant time to work out where such CCTV would be needed and would be most appropriate to be located. So the officer's recommendation is amended to make those changes.
Thank you. So, given we've got those changes, and I think we've got them in front of us as well, can I have someone to move the councillor's recommendation? Thanks, Councillor Potter. Can I second it? Councillor Costin. Is it to be opposed? It's not to be opposed. Councillor Potter.
Thanks, Mayor. If this is approved, it shows support for the Apollo Bay community, both the locals and the tourists. It's a big investment. It's a multi-million-dollar investment in Apollo Bay, coming at a time where some businesses, especially the smaller ones, are struggling. And IGA is not one of the big supermarkets. It's not a Coles or a Woolworths, but clearly they are showing confidence in the community and wanting to invest, not just in their supermarket, but in relation to accommodation and some additional shops. And Councillor Costin might be able to correct me on the wording, but the existing IGA is small. They have done some renovations internally to try and modernise a bit, but at the back there's a sign, doesn't say coming soon, but I think site of a new IGA. I don't know how many years that has been there for. Now, finally, if this is supported, we will be getting a new IGA, brand new facility on a site that is an eyesore, given the unfortunate fire that burnt down a couple of shops a few years ago, not that long ago, really. So I'm happy to support this. A couple of tweaks have been made to the recommendation. I think councillors having an on-site meeting with the planners was very valuable, and has been able to nut out a couple of more things. And I think that has been sensible of councillors trying to not squeeze the developer or the proponent, but to try and get just a little couple extra better outcomes for the community. Public toilets, more than likely we built there, taking some of the onus off council. But I think I'll stop there, Mayor. I know Councillor Costin will have a bit to say, and perhaps other councillors as well, but happy to move this recommendation.
Thanks, Councillor Potter. Councillor Costin.
Thank you, Mayor. It's a pleasure to second this motion. I'd like to thank officers for their hard work and their negotiation with the applicant, and for the councillors who came down for the site visit. And there has been some small tweaking, some minor tweaks, which have improved the conditions. Apollo Bay community has been waiting patiently since April 2021, since the fire in April 2021. This site has remained an eyesore since then, and we only received 2 submissions, 2 objections, and they're related to the car park itself, not to the overall development. So the overall development is quite well accepted by the Apollo Bay community. It's 3 retail shops, a supermarket, a liquor shop, which the applicant proposes to transfer the licence from the existing IGA to the new liquor shop. And there's also 5 apartments in the upper levels. The car park waiver is interesting because it's a large amount of money, and it was initially a concern. But if you consider the trade-off that we most likely will get public toilets built on the site, which will be leased back to council. So that these are toilets, and it may cost us the same amount of money to build the toilets without even thinking about trying to buy the land to put toilets on also. And it will allow the removal of the temporary public toilets, which are occupying 3 car parking spots in the Pascoe Street car park. The laneway, there is a connection. Our Apollo Bay structure plan has aspirations to link Pascoe Street with the Great Ocean Road with the pedestrian walkways, and this development is doing this along the northern boundary, and that will be, for most of it, will be a covered walkway, which will be a great thing also. and the fact that one of the shops is facing onto Pascoe Street and activates Pascoe Street as a retail centre is excellent and meets our objectives in our recently finished community development plan, which prioritises traffic, will most likely prioritise traffic down Pascoe Street. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Costin. Any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Mayor White. It was interesting to see almost a flurry of hands go up to councillors to support this motion, to see who could first move it and second it, but that's great to see the support. And the reason behind that is because obviously a good application. The applicants put a lot of consideration into taking advantage of the site in an appropriate way for the community. As Councillor Costin has pointed out, that they've got shops that are facing on to the Pascoe Street Park. They're taking advantage of the park. They're actually going to include that within a shopping precinct. So it's not just a car park. It becomes an active area of the community to interact with. And so that will liven that area up, will increase the people traffic and enhance the viability of Pascoe Street for everybody that has a business in that area. So that'll be really great. It does link the Ocean Road to Pascoe Street in a way which is not available now, in an open, inclusive, brightly lit, safe way that people will feel invited to walk through to see what's out there. People will want to park in Pascoe Street to then access the Ocean Road rather than trying to cram all into that area. And it does free up further on IGA. There's no parking on site for that current supermarket. This actually provides some of that solution. And we've also agreed there's additional parking that can be made available on the main Ocean Road and back in Pascoe Street once this development is completed. So it will actually answer some of the issues there. Them providing us with toilets, well, that's at least 400k that saves the council and the community for us to build it, and then we still have to find a piece of land to put it on. So they'll actually be nice toilets. Imagine that, nice retail-built toilets, appropriately kept, undercover, well-lit, secure, safe. People will feel comfortable going to them rather than going to public toilets, which often look like a bomb shelter built to withstand a Mack truck impact or something. So this will be something that'll be nice and people will want to do, to use. So we talk about toilets a lot, but they're a necessity. So I'd like to thank the applicants for this design and for their thought put into it, and the fact that it's going to enliven the area with residents, with shops and with access.
Thanks. Councillor Finnegan.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I'm supporting this motion. The reality is this development, at least in my eyes, is an example of just how we can have it all. You know, new housing, new retail premises, including a supermarket, new toilets, and cleaning up a massive eyesore that's resulted from a previous fire. You know, the reality is that the 5 units here will contribute to, well, I would hope would contribute to going some way to lessening the housing crisis in Apollo Bay. Not the whole way, but obviously anything is better than nothing. The new IGA supermarket is going to be a much needed addition to the town's offering that isn't going to be operated by a soulless multinational. You know, new toilets, while they aren't the most glamorous things, I would imagine that, again, that new toilets within a retail development, as Councillor Arnott has rightly brought up, are going to be much more lively, and I would probably argue are probably going to look like the Taj Mahal compared to, you know, some of the offerings that have been around in the past. And critically, I think what's really important is it's going to open up Pascoe Street to the Great Ocean Road and enable people to travel through there, and hopefully as a result of this development will help to stimulate business and the like on Pascoe Street. So I think it's a good outcome for everyone. It's an example of how we can have it all, so I'm supporting.
Thank you, Councillor Finnegan. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Hart.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I won't repeat all that has been said, other than to say that I think I pretty much support the comments that have been made, and pleased to be able to support this application. I think to have the dwellings as part of this is a really important part and a positive part of this particular application. The on-site visit was useful, and you can see quite easily how this will open up the connection between Pascoe Street and Great Ocean Road. The only thing I will comment on, and I don't propose to change anything that's been moved or seconded, I think there needs to be a note on someone's file so that once the building is complete, and if the toilets, when they are complete, that someone has a serious look, the council at that time, on removing the toilets on Pascoe Street, on whether that should occur, the ones that are in the car park, free up those car parks, just to make sure that the foresight from this application isn't lost when that actually occurs, because some of us may not be here then, and there may not be someone, so someone needs to write a note somewhere just for that point.
Anyone else wish to speak? No. Councillors, I'll now call for a vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried 7-0. Thank you, councillors. We'll now conclude the planning meeting of the Colac Otway Shire. The meeting's now closed. Thank you.
Thanks all.